Thank you, everyone. We'll call this meeting of the Humboldt County Association of Governments Board of Directors to order. And our first order of business is a roll call.
All right. Chair Johnson.
Here.
Mayor Jones.
Here.
Supervisor Madrone.
Present.
Councilmember Castellano.
Here.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Here.
Councilmember Jorgensen.
Here.
Councilmember West.
Here.
Councilmember Orr.
Here.
PAC member Arroyo. PAC member Allstrand.
Here.
Thank you very much. And our first order is business is to adjourn as the HCOG board and reconvene as the Policy Advisory Committee. And we have three presentations. The first, the Strategic Highway Safety Plan Dashboard with Mr. Mike Coletti, Senior Vice President.
Yeah, I can give just a little bit of an intro on this one. Mike is here presenting on behalf of Caltrans. He is from Kimley Horn, and they developed the Strategic Highway Safety Plan Dashboard. He's going to go through that tool with a focus on Broadway so we can kind of get an idea, but just a reminder that it works for any of your communities. We thought Broadway would be good because there's clearly a lot of data for that location. But yeah, just to remind you that, you know, this same dashboard is available for any of you to pull up and use and get the same information for your communities. And I believe he's joining us on Zoom.
Yes, sound check. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm still getting set up. You guys are quite impressive. Starting, just a little trouble getting Zoom going, but you guys are already on the ball and right in there. So let me still getting set up here. I had it open, but I had too many windows open at that time. But let me start from the beginning. Okay, so I will go ahead and share screen and see if that works. Again, my name is Mike Coletti with Kimley Horn. And yeah, we are really for the last 5 years, we've been supporting California on the Strategic Highway Safety Plan and developed this dashboard. And it was a big push by Caltrans. There was resistance in the past to have a publicly available dashboard and be sharing data and having a tool where Caltrans is actually kind of providing data in a specific format for folks, but it was a priority for the Caltrans Division of Safety Programs to really promote safety and the sharing of this data and that people can look at it and analyze it themselves. So it was a big push, and we are real excited and want more people to use it and come back with questions. So the formatting on my page is a little off right now. Let me just see the way it's zoomed up. Okay. But this is the page, and I don't know if it was.
So we're not seeing it, Mike. We're seeing launch the Zoom. You've got another tab up there for the dashboard. It looks like you might need to click on that tab.
Just to the left. Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah, I need to. There we go. Thank you. Now you should see it.
Yeah, good. Looks great.
Okay, good. I can. Looks like I can see it now there as well. Okay, so yes, and I can put this into the chat as well. Although you can tell I'm less, I would say. Zoom
We've got our chat feature disabled for the public meeting.
Okay, sure. Very good. Good to see everyone. Okay, this can be provided either from there or I can follow up with this information, but this is publicly available from Caltrans website. Anyone can go on this and register. There is a little bit of a very quick registration process. You do have to go back and sign a few disclaimers, and pretty much this is just recognizing the fact that this is shared with all safety practitioners in the state, but there are some restrictions on the use of the data for those purposes. So you go ahead and do that, sign up for your account, and it will process very quickly. You will be in. My understanding is that's generally just within a few minutes, and you have access into the account. And then you come here and you're able to click on both finalized data. Right now, we're 2011 through 2020 and 2021 provisional data. And I'll show you the difference there. We are at just received SWTR's finalized data through 2021. So in the next month, at least, we expect to have an update, basically that it would drop 2011 and add 2021. And then we'll have provisional data for 2022. One thing about this particular dashboard, it is set up to really make it fairly easy to go through and query through the data with the filters already set for you and for the state in support of the SHSP. There is a homepage with lots of information here about the dashboard. There also is a how-to guide as well as an instructional video in both English and Spanish that's available in small pieces, as well as just a few minutes to give you an overview of how to use the page and some information on how to download reports for your area. So there's a landing page with general information, but going right in to this information, you can go to a fatal data tab. And then I will say, and I apologize, I missed the very beginning of the intro, and I believe I heard a focus on Broadway, and I'm actually not familiar, and I must have missed if there was specifics on that. I was, if you want to provide me more direction, but I was planning to go through here and go to really just focus then on the county and go with that that data and show you the functionality. So if you just want to show it, and you can pick from any sort of any county information here, as well as you can pick a Caltrans district, and that did update to match since you're all in the same Caltrans district. You then can pick, you can also pick from.
Yeah, we don't have an MPO.
MPO, and then you could pick from, so if here then from the county, does your area overlap with the county directly?
Yeah, yes, it does.
Okay, so then as well, you can dive in and hit a particular city or unincorporated. Humboldt can also go down to. No, so those areas are in there for selection. And more primarily, this is intended to be a tool that evaluates an area for your critical issues versus a real corridor specific tool, even at an intersection level. Now we can go through and show that it does do that, but the primary purpose of this is to look at, okay, how are things trending for, in this case, Humboldt County, and this again can be done for any of these areas. So you're able to see the fatality trend for the last 10 years. You can then look at serious injuries, and you can see how those have been increasing. Up top is the actual injuries. Bottom is serious injury crashes, so those are separated. And then you can go into the challenge areas still, that's carried over just for Humboldt County. You can go through and I guess just look at this first and say, okay, Humboldt County lane departures, out of this total number of fatal and serious injuries for 10 years, the highest number is lane departures. I'd say no surprise to anyone in this call, I'd expect, but you can also then pick and see, okay, impaired driving is next, and then aggressive and speeding based on the citation and the level of each. One other aspect of this, if you go and select lane departures from right here, it will then show you that lane departures, which was 734, but now these are the crossover for lane departures from the other areas. Of your lane departures at 734, 71 were young drivers, 175 were aggressive and speeding, and then 301 of your 734 lane departures did have impaired as a component. So you can kind of see that cross reference on this information. I'll come back to the location tab. The county tab shows crash rates. You actually have the frequency of crashes, and then you can see then you have the crash rate on this page, and you can look at it for the state as well, but you see how that crash rate information. If you go into cause, again, similar to, and this is, I still do have lane departures selected. So lane departures, the number one is hit object. You can go back to all challenge area information. The second type of crash, pedestrian involved. The top three, I'll start over: hit object, then vehicle, pedestrian, and then overturned are the top three crash causes within Humboldt County, as well as under the influence as a primary collision factor as a number one as well. Improper turning and unsafe speed also very high. Next tab, you can go to crash conditions, get information for lighting, time of day, month, day of week, and then time of day. And then again, this is updatable for any particular challenge area, which is our breakout. And will highlight that. Again, this matches in with the SHSP. You have all challenge areas: aging, bicyclists, commercial vehicle, distracted driving, and this is distracted driving per the citation. This one in particular is very underrepresented in the crash data because it is very hard for an officer arriving on the scene at a fatal or serious injury crash to know exactly whether someone was distracted when they arrive after the fact. But then motorcyclists, driver's licensing, impaired intersections, and driver's licensing isn't necessarily intuitive, but that is someone that's involved in the fatal or serious injury crash that is not properly licensed, unlicensed, or not having the right license category, or suspended. And there's intersections, as well as impaired lane departures, occupant protection, pedestrians, speeding, aggressive driving, work zones, and young driver are how this can be filtered. I didn't mention that at first, but this is just fatal and serious injury. That is the focus of the SHSP, and that is the focus of the safe system approach to really hone in on fatal and serious injury. And so that was that's the focus of this tool or dashboard. You can go to party level. This does give you race information. This is from Switters. This is the party race. That's for the whole kind of vehicle and officer's assessment. So when you deal with FARS data, you get better race information because that actually is NHTSA spends a lot of time and gets that for the actual victim. But right now we're pulling up the readily available for fatal and serious injury, the Switters party race information. We've done some other analyses that have looked specifically at the more detailed race information within FARS. And then there's also information to go into victim, male, female, age. I will say we do have filters on all the pages for victim, gender, party, race, state highway system or not, and tribal. And the notes will show you the tribal is for anything, any crash that's within 5-mile boundary of a tribal area. A lot of the tribal areas were small, and a lot of the influence of that tribe is in the surrounding roads. So it's decided to include that tribal filter those fatal and serious injury crashes that are in the area around the tribal boundary. I did mention there are two main data sources. We do have this one page that shows FARS data. That is the federal National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's official numbers that are used. And we do reference that just for records of actually what's kind of really the document. We have more information available for both fatal and serious injuries from the state data, which is Switters, And so that's what the rest of our tabs use as the data. Going back to location, you are able to visualize that. We aren't able for it to do an automatic zoom in, but we still do have Humboldt County selected. So it's just showing that Humboldt County. So we can zoom in here. It does give you your total number of fatalities over that 10-year period, 247, as well as 889 serious injuries. And then this information is mapped. But again, the primary function so far on this dashboard, again, it is for jurisdictions to look at all of its, all of the crashes in the region and come up with a systemic kind of approach overall. There are other tools just for different areas that are more geared towards even kind of flipping a certain data and getting summaries just for a particular corridor level or an intersection. And this dashboard, though you can view those individual crashes, it does not have that much detail for an individual crash on the map. Let's see now. There are layers now. We just recently were able to get Tableau's information on the SB 535 equity related data, and you can turn off and on the crash layers, and we're looking at additional layers that can be added into this information. Let me zoom out to get to the equity layers. And maybe actually we need to go back to all the crashes to get that right now. But I'll stop now and see if there's any questions, or if there's something, even going back to that reference to Broadway, or something you'd like us to like me to look at in particular.
Thanks. Is there any questions for? We don't have any questions yet. This has all the same information that Switters has?
Yes, it is using Switter's data for fatal and serious injury. We did pull in, I guess, the two additional data elements. Well, it's a couple different data elements we've added onto that. We have used additional data cleansing from TIMS, which is under UC Berkeley SafeTrack. They have gone through a program and really improved the geolocation of the crashes. We have found that the 10 years of data from Switters is really in the range of 50% properly geolocated. A lot of that has to do with the local allied agencies. Not CHP is pretty good at getting all of their stuff located, but some of the different law enforcement agencies throughout the state have not got their information correctly geocoded into Switters. But then Berkeley goes through a program and gets the geolocation based on the road and offset from an intersection. And so we have incorporated that. We think we're up to close to 97% geolocated information in this with that add-on from Switters. We also added that tribal layer and tribal filter, which is information again from UC Berkeley SafeTrack, which is kind of an add-on of filtering that data from Switters. And then we added the map of SB 535 equity related overlay information, but the base data is the same as Switters. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. No other questions? I think you've hit all the high points.
Yeah. And again, we're available, and we definitely like people using it, and would be open to kind of if follow-up questions come up down the road. I know it may be new to a lot of people, so really definitely appreciate the invitation and getting to share the tool, and would be open. But yes, feel free to ask questions in the future.
All right, thank you very much. I can see the usefulness.
Excellent.
And now we come to our fiscal year 21-22 TDA fiscal and compliance audits with Mr. Keith Borges.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we ready for this next session?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So I'm here today with the presentation of the audits for the June 30, 22 audit cycle, and a little bit of an apology up front for the delay in getting all of the audits completed this year. Most of them were done by the March 31st deadline and submitted to the state. We had a couple that took a little bit longer with some transitions in the finance departments at Arcata and with HTA, but they've all been completed and recently submitted to the state, so that is good. And then so we're here today, and as a general overview of the audit, the fiscal and compliance audit, for those of you who are new on the board, our annual audit consists of, it includes the 7 cities, the county, and 2 of the JPAs, HCOG and Humboldt Transit Authority. HCOG and Humboldt Transit Authority undergo a complete, full governmental audit, which means all aspects are being looked at for the entire entity, whereas for the claimants, the cities and the county, the TDA fiscal and compliance audit only addresses the TDA-related funds, so a very small portion of the city's overall operations. For HCOG, their operational activities are the items that you receive funding for and do your various programs and projects. Those are the projects and expenses funded with the LTF money, state transit money, RSTP funds, and in some SGR money. Those are actually the fiduciary funds. Those are the agencies for which you receive the funds, and your involvement covers the allocation, apportionment, and distribution of those funds. But those are separate from HCOG's operational activities as the RTPA. So sorry about that. So for the claimants, we do a fiscal audit and of that transit fund, generate a little financial statement, and as part of your package, you would have probably received the statement for your respective city or county, as well as the statement for HTA and HCOG. Each of the claimants' reports consist of a small financial statement and footnotes and indication of any non-compliance that there may be for the entity for that particular year, for either their transit or non-transit uses. Most of the claimants are using the funds for either solely for transit purposes or a combination of transit and or road-related purposes. Any findings that result from our audits at the claimant's level are going to be included in our management letter, which we'll cover briefly at the end of my presentation. So, and again, our report looks solely at those particular, those pretty minimal funds that are part of the LTF and STAF process. For HCOG, as the RTPA though, again, this is a full governmental audit, and it includes both their operational activities as well as those fiduciary funds that HCOG is responsible for overseeing. We're required to present the claim, the city or HCOG is required to make their presentation, two different sets of financial statements, one done on a government-wide basis, which is a full accrual accounting with recognition of all long-term liabilities, such as your GASB 68 pension liability and your OPEB retiree health insurance liabilities. And then we also present a presentation made under the fund accounting methodology, which is the methodology that the HCOG keeps its books on. So that's the more traditional governmental approach. But we're required to do that full accrual presentation as part of the government financial accounting requirements. The audit opinion for the year ended 6/30/22 was an unqualified opinion, which is good, which means that the books and records as audited fairly present the financial position of HCOG at June 30, 2022, as well as the results of its operating activities for the year then ended. Just a couple, the statements you have there, and if there are any questions about any of the particulars on them, I will be happy to answer them. But just a couple highlights on the financial side, as has been the case for the last several years, that GASB accrual for the pension liability and the OPEB took a fairly sizable jump again this year, around $450,000. And again, that represents the calculation of those future liabilities of HCOG. That's the primary reason why on the government-wide financial statement, HCOG is showing an unrestricted deficit, showing not enough assets to cover those liabilities. But I think, as most of you folks know, in your cities and so on, it's the same situation. You're not expected to have those liabilities fully covered at this point, but they are required to be presented. In the governmental presentation, again, the traditional fund accounting, that's kind of the one that I would say we generally focus on. That's the funds that you have regular control of on an annual basis. It covers the RPAF funds, the PPM monies, and fund grants, Caltrans grants, and so on. The income sources from which you do your all of your operations for the year. At the end of June, those operating funds had about $2.3 million in assets, total assets, mainly cash and receivables, and the bulk of those assets were held by the SAFE fund. So on the operating statement this year, there was a small operating loss with the expenses exceeding the revenues by about $70,000. Prior year, it had been the other way around. The excess was about $93,000 in excess revenues. And at June 30th, on the governmental fund basis, your unrestricted funds total just under $600,000. So that's a reasonable surplus that is available for HCOG. The fiduciary activities that HCOG is responsible for, the TDA funds, the main source of money that the entities claim, TDA, STAF, RSTP, and SGR, those statements are on pages 15 and 16. And primarily, again, that's going to be accounting for the funds that come in from the state and that are claimed and dispersed to the individual cities and counties. And it's at that level that they undergo their audit. We audit those funds at the claimant level. The basic audit report also includes a required management discussion and analysis section, MD&A, and that's on pages 4 to 8 of the audit report for HCOG. And it's management summarization of the operating results and activities for the year. The audit report also consists of required footnote disclosures, and those are on pages 17 to 29 this year. Those are required disclosures that list and identify the various accounting methods and things that are followed in regards to fixed assets, the retirement plan disclosures, and so on. So those are all required elements as part of your financial statement. One of the things we also do each year, as I mentioned earlier, was that we are doing a compliance audit at the claimant level, looking to ensure that their use of the TDA and related funds are expended in accordance with the TDA regulations. The main items tend to be the transit-related compliance requirements, things like fund eligibility and fare box ratio. Last couple of years, with the pandemic relief and the funds that have been made available and the waiver of some of the fare box requirements, there really haven't been too many issues in that area. Most of the entities are, relied on a lot of the COVID-related funds that were provided, and the transit operators were, they had their fare box requirements waived, so they didn't even have to meet the 10% requirement. So our management letter is where we summarize any of those findings that happened in prior years or the current year. And we look to see if the items have been addressed, either corrected, or if they still remain an item that needs a future or further resolution. The TDA fund eligibility findings that we've had in prior years, I believe, have all been addressed, or they should have been resolved in the current year's cycle of claims. So I think we're okay on those items. And there were no TDA eligibility findings in the current year, as I mentioned. The SAFE program has been an ongoing, there's been a recommendation, and it's in progress of having some enhancements or updating the SAFE plan. And I know that HCOG is in the midst of having contracted with someone, and there's quite a bit of SAFE projects in the works. So I think that one will probably be able to be eliminated going forward. We've had a finding at the city of Arcata in regards to the Greyhound bus program, and they've made some progress in terms of reducing the amount of funds that are being used to cover some of the excess costs for that Greyhound program. But there still is an accumulated surplus, and there still needs to be a plan in terms of how the city is going to address a long-term resolution to that finding. City of Fortuna had a couple fare box recovery findings for the last 2 years, not being able to meet that 10% requirement. But as I mentioned, due to the pandemic relief, that is not going to be an issue until I believe that comes back online back in the 2024 fiscal year. And lastly, just there has been the challenges of getting the audits completed, in the timely fashion that Caltrans would like to see them done by March 31st of every year. So again, they had the situation for last year, and also again during the current audit, of not being able to get them done completely, all of them done in a timely fashion. So that again it will continue to be something that we work towards. I think in the city of Arcata's case, with a new finance person coming on, I'm optimistic that will help us be able to get that audit done by the March 31st deadline, and HTA as well. HTA is just it's a big audit, and we're generally waiting for their external accountant to completely close their books before we're able to start the audit. And it just becomes a timing crunch, but we will be making renewed efforts to make sure that we get them all done by March 31st. So that's all I have to say to start with, and I'll happy to answer any questions about any particulars of any of the city's reports or the HCOG report or anything else.
Thank you. That's very exhaustive, and
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. I apologize.
you cover, well, I don't mean it that way. I didn't mean exhausting. I meant it's very covers everything, and a lot of detail, and you've taken that into consideration and done a good job with that. Is anybody have a question for? Well, we see no questions here, Keith, and then thank you very much. You've done a great job as always, and we appreciate all your work.
Thank you.
Oh, there is a hand there.
Yeah, it looks like we have a request to make a
LaDonna.
public comment.
LaTanya.
Yes, I can ask my question.
Yes.
I got two questions. One, the gentleman mentioned about retirement reporting requirements. I'm just wondering, if you can give an example of that? And then the other question I had was for a city to make their fare box requirement. I'm just wondering what he was mentioning Fortuna. I'm just wondering what would cause a city not to meet their fare box requirement.
Well, in regards to the fare box requirement, they're required, or the code says they should collect 10% of the cost of operating the transit system through fares. So each year we look at the operating costs for the transit system and come up with there's a total amount. And so their fare box target ratio is 10% of that. And in Fortuna's case, they ran into problems, as many of the carriers did during the pandemic when ridership was down. Operating costs kind of continued or even escalated, but actual fare revenues decreased. And that's in their case, that's why Fortuna did not meet that 10% requirement. They only collected somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 or 8 or 9% of their operating costs through fares.
Thank you. Okay.
It wasn't not because people didn't want to ride the bus. It's just because of the requirements that we had to have spacing for seating, and there
were certainly aspects of ridership declines that for any number of reasons, and you're right, the spacing, the frequency of when routes and so on. And that is, of course, I believe why the state implemented the waivers, where they said, we're not going to require you to meet your fare box ratio during the years that were primarily impacted by the pandemic, June of 21, 22, and 23. So, and then I wasn't sure, the other question, was that for me also about the pension? And could you repeat that one?
Yes.
Go
ahead.
I asked for examples of the retirement reporting requirements or retirement reportings. What are some examples of that?
There is.
Well, they're required. Any governmental entity is required to, and they belong to CalPERS primarily, as the CalPERS retirement system, and CalPERS as a system generates reports and they calculate what each entity's share of the future retirement liability is for their employees. So they look at the number of employees they have currently, and they do all kinds of very detailed, complex calculations and projections of earnings on the CalPERS funds and so on. And each entity is assigned, or not assigned, but they end up with a proportional share of this overall fund liability that CalPERS has out there. And so HCOG, as a member of CalPERS, has their own little pool, so to speak, but they have this liability that they have to recognize every year.
All right. Thank you, Keith, for covering that. And again, thank you for your diligence in this. And I think we can confidently recommend that the PAC recommend the HCOG board receive and file the fiscal year audit 2021-22 Transportation Development Act fiscal and compliance audits.
It's 20 to 21, and I would so move.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. It doesn't require a vote
doesn't-
necessarily.
It doesn't
It's-
require action? Oh,
It's just purely a recommendation.
okay. I can remove my
Thank
motion.
you.
Thank you.
And we come now to our third presentation, Creating the Grove, with 3 videos from Lynette Nutter and David Fernie for Arcata House Partnership.
Yeah, I think our tech is working well. We should have those pulled right up.
The struggle from day to day, it's daunting.
I never thought it was going to come to this.
I felt like a failure.
It was just me and my cat, and I just parked in an alley, and we were kind of isolated.
You get depressed, you get sad, because you think nobody cares.
It's hard for people to ask for help. You know, that's just the way it is.
Many people are not homeless by choice. There are many people in our community right now who are one paycheck away from being homeless. Arcata House Partnership is a homeless service provider that provides service throughout the county to people who are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless.
I think housing is an absolute necessity, and we have lack of housing.
Most of the people we serve are people like you and I
can't
who have
hear
had
the
medical
presentation.
bills that are out of control and they just can't pay them, whose rents have been increased dramatically over the last 2 years, and some people just can't afford to pay the rent anymore. And so they're sleeping in their cars, they're sleeping in tents, they're sleeping at the marsh, and they're coming to us for food support and assistance. We are serving more people than ever who are hungry and more people than ever who are homeless. The numbers aren't going down.
It's a crisis, and it's not just Arcata and Humboldt County, it's California and the rest of the nation.
Homelessness is an environmental issue, a healthcare issue, a business issue, a tourist issue. All of those things are affected by homelessness.
Business owners oftentimes will cite, losses in revenue and a decrease in foot traffic.
People see a lot of people who are homeless hanging out outside of your store, then probably they're not going to feel so comfortable going into your store. But what people don't understand is often those people who are outside of your store could be helped and could be moved along to permanent housing if we had an opportunity.
So, there's certainly a financial impact. There's an impact on a feeling of safety and security. And there's just an overall impact on the health and vitality of our city.
The face of the homeless that we're seeing is not just the person who is talking to themselves on the plaza. It's really about the person sitting next to you who is at your job, or the student who's sitting next to your child in school, and you just don't know that they're homeless and that vulnerable.
A huge part of our houselessness in our community is students. Oftentimes they end up in their cars. They end up couch surfing. I know when I was houseless and I was in my car, I looked like I was camping with my daughter.
I've been homeless myself, and I understand what it feels like that comes with being homeless and not having a place to call your own. The average age of the person on the street is drastically increasing. First-time homelessness for people over 50, over 60, it's really mind-boggling.
We couldn't afford the rent without a roommate, and we couldn't find the right roommate, so we lost the apartment. We ended up homeless. You struggle from day to day. You're not only worried about today, but you're worried about tomorrow and where you're going to go and where you're going to get that meal and if you're going to get that meal. Dumpster diving doesn't become apparent until you're homeless. You can't find a meal and then all of a sudden the dumpster looks good. And you think, wow, I never thought I'd ever do that. But you're there and you're doing it.
It's not going to get any better unless we collectively make a decision to make it better.
There's a tremendous amount of hope as we're facing people who have no hope.
Arcata House Partnership has been fortunate to receive a grant for a Home Key 2 project. We're calling that the Grove. It's for a 60-unit apartment complex to provide permanent housing for people who are homeless. Homelessness can be cured. The solution to homelessness is housing.
The homeless situation is more in need of attention than it ever has been. What are people doing? Well, they're working tirelessly. They're working 60 hours a week. They're trying to get things done. If this is carpet from 1992, it's gone. We're gonna get it out of here. Kitchenette unit will be over there. We'll have a kitchen, we'll have a bathroom, we'll have storage, they'll have a sofa chair, they'll have a full-size bed. Really trying to provide a clean living space for the tenants to move into.
The permanent housing that will be at the Grove is 60 units of affordable housing. To qualify, people have to be homeless and have to be low income. We are going to be prioritizing the most vulnerable citizens in our community. The people who are chronically homeless, the people who have disabilities and it's really dangerous for them to be sleeping outside, the people who haven't been homeless before and just don't know how to do it, like the 80-year-old woman who calls and says, I don't know how to be homeless. So we will be prioritizing those people and they will be offered an apartment first.
It's permanent supportive housing. And it gives people the will to live because all they have left is the will to survive. You know, that's who we're housing, our survivors.
We come with no judgment, and I think that's what's important. Over 50% of our staff have currently or recently been homeless. They have lived experience and they understand what it's like to be out there. We want to make sure that the services we're providing people are the services they need, the services they want, and the services that are available in our community. Homelessness is expensive for cities. It's expensive for towns, it's expensive for communities.
The impacts are tremendous in quality of life, especially for local businesses. But, you know, there's a true spirit of collaboration here in the region to do all that we can to get people off the streets.
We hope by providing housing for 60 people or 60 families that we will reduce the needs of the emergency rooms, the needs to call law enforcement, the needs to put people in jail who are homeless. There will be a positive effect on our communities, and that effect will reduce the service needs in all of those other areas.
It's not going to happen overnight, but I think the Grove really is a shining example of the possibilities that exist in a community like Arcata, where there's such a spirit of collaboration and compassion. I think we're all working toward the same goal.
This gated community has 24-hour on-site staff. It has case managers who will be available to help people as they transition from being homeless to being housed. It'll have a community room, it'll have on-site laundry, and other amenities to make it just a wonderful place to live. When people are homeless, they don't generally have a lot of possessions, so this project will provide a furnished apartment, will provide people with sheets and towels and shampoo and pans for their stove and a refrigerator to put their food in. All of those things that you and I take for granted and people who are homeless don't have access to.
I think the Grove is the next step in affirming that we're doing the right thing.
The solution to homelessness is housing. The governor has recognized that and has put funds forward to address these issues. And we are grateful that the Grove is one of those projects. Arcata House Partnership believes that housing is a human right. Welcome to the Grove. This 60-unit apartment complex will provide housing to people who are at the lowest levels of income and who are homeless. We are so honored to present to you the Grove.
It means a lot. It means a great deal.
But yeah, this place is very important to me. It's very cool, a new beginning.
Something I couldn't believe, that I would ever get support at my age.
Today, people are moving in. It's cold, it's wet. By the end of Sunday, 60 people will be off the streets and in their own apartments with their own heat and their own bed and their own hot showers.
Going to get the first move-ins for the Grove.
Check him in the shower and then the dog, and then we have a little hot box to put people's items in, just to make sure there's no bugs or anything like that, and then get them into their room.
Exciting day. It is exciting. The gamut of emotions will be seen,
yes,
felt, and demonstrated.
Congratulations, we are so proud of you. Are you okay with this? Okay, great.
Here's your key to your room, and here's a $25 gift card to get you started.
Good, because then I can go through some.
That is Therese.
People are getting the kind of service they need that they could never get when they were homeless, because you have to have an address.
That's a good gift.
Awesome.
Oh, that's good.
People are starting to take ownership here, and they're doing it in amazing ways. They're asking for a garden. They're asking for art supplies. They're being involved in community activities. They're getting mail at their address for the first time in years.
I don't have to live in a shelter anymore. Now I'm thriving.
I don't even, it's amazing. It's like a miracle. It's a miracle.
The most magnificent part of being here is the individuals gave me an opportunity for me to sit and hear my own inner voice and my own heartbeat.
I'm very grateful. This is a beautiful place to be.
What I see the Grove doing for the residents is giving them a sense of belonging, a place to call their own.
I can't be more proud. I am absolutely beside myself with joy. The day that people moved in, people were crying when we gave them their keys. People who haven't been housed in 40 years have a place to stay.
I think 60 people at the Grove, those are 60 people every night who are not on the streets and the sidewalks in our immediate area. That is a huge benefit And I think any progress is good progress. But our work is far from over, and we need to continue to work alongside our community members, our business partners, our elected officials, and leaders from throughout the region.
It's just amazing, really. The city stepped up in a lot of ways to help us get this done.
I am so proud of our staff who have worked diligently over the last 4 weeks to get this project up and running. People didn't believe that we could do it. So thank you to all of our staff. Thank you to the community for your support. And most of all, thank you to all of the people who believed that they were going to have a great place to live tonight.
I think the Grove is the next step in affirming that we're doing the right thing.
Housing is the first step. We're housing first. Then we connect people with services, and we help people to build a new, healthy community, one that's going to sustain them in their long-term housing goals.
Well, are anyone going to be able to answer questions or?
I can take questions. This is part of our multimedia catalog through the REAP program. So this was funded with REAP funds. We watched a video a couple months ago. This is another one. I think we have one more video coming. We are working right now to come up with a day where we can kind of do a community viewing of all of the products. There's also a comic book that is finished, but we need to reproduce it quite a few copies. And then we will also there's one art project that's a sculpture. So we're looking at having an event at the Jefferson Community Center here in Eureka. Date still being worked out with the artists, but hoping to have kind of more of a community unveiling of all of these products we've had through the REAP grant.
All right, thank you. Is there any comment or? No. Oh,
well,
wait.
I can just give a pretty cool example to all of you when they were talking about impacts to healthcare. So there was a gentleman who had been in the emergency room over 365 times in a year, sometimes twice a day. Once he was housed and had that supportive service there, at the check-in, I think it had been a couple months that he had been housed, not one call to the emergency room. So it made just that one person was a big impact for the hospital there.
Oh, yeah. Very good. Thank you. Any public comment? Looks like LaTanya has her hand up.
Yes, I wanted to make sure you had my name because I didn't say my name the last time. LaTanya Jacob, no S at the end of Jacob. And my question was for Arcata House. Has that project, has the location changed and has it expanded? Meaning, is it bigger than where it was in Arcata next to the bus station, the Trailways or Greyhound bus station? Is it still there, or are there different places that's part of Arcata House?
Hi, LaTanya. This is Councilmember Atkins Salazar, and I'm not from the Arcata House, but I do represent Arcata, and I can tell you there still is that service center at the transit station. So that's not housing, but it's for services. And then this is additional housing, permanent housing for folks. So it's an expansion of the program, not a change or reduction in it.
And Colin Fisk.
Hi. Just wanted to let you all know. Seems to have been a technical glitch. I think the audio for the video was not shared through Zoom or something like that. So just a note for future presentations. Thanks.
And thank you. We'll be working on that. If there's no other comment or questions, we'll move on to our public comment on non-agenda items. If anyone wants to make a comment on items not on today's agenda, this is the time. And LaTanya.
Hi, this is it may not be an agenda item, but I just want to point out when homeless people are homeless, they're looking for shelter, and that affects their health, which is why they go to the emergency room for medical assistance. And when they don't have the issues of not being housed in their own home or apartment, that as the person who was on the board, that the emergency room visits decreased tremendously. And I just want to point that out, that being homeless is it's no joke. Shelter is so important, and I'm glad to see that these things are being addressed.
Thank you for that. And seeing no other comment, we'll move on to the consent calendar. We have 4 items: approval of the meeting record, technical advisory committee bylaw change, CHP supplemental patrol agreement, and the TDA Act bike and ped allocation request from the city of Blue Lake. Is there anybody would like to pull anything? Okay.
I would make a motion then to accept the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah, should we open it up to the public?
Oh, yes, we forgot public comment. Any public comment on the consent calendar items? See none. We'll revote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Well, thank you. That's passed. We move now to, there are no action items. There's no informational items at this time. We'll reconvene as the HCOG board by motion, and as we reconvene, we'll approve the PAC recommendations.
Move that we reconvene and approve the PAC recommendations.
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion passes, and we come to the staff and PAC member reports.
Okay, I have just a very brief report. A couple weeks ago, we had the Dan Burden visit. Dan Burden is a national treasure, walkability expert. He went to many of our communities. He was in town for about 4 days. This was a huge success. I think it was probably the most well-attended HCOG event ever. We had one meeting at the Wharfinger. There were at least 80 people there. And I think there were 100 people that turned out for the Arcata walk audit to actually walk around in Arcata with him. Also good turnouts in McKinleyville and Blue Lake, Eureka as well. So yeah, he made it to quite a few of our communities. Just huge success. Really got to give Una on staff, our senior planner, Una Smith, great credit for that. She did a phenomenal job organizing his visit, crammed as much as humanly possible into those 4 days. And just really a lot of people enjoyed the time. All of his slide decks are up on our website. We're waiting for the videos are still coming to us from Access Humboldt, so those would be posted as soon as we can get them up, but the slide decks are there. So take a look if you're interested. Last board meeting, we had a request for a road charge update, gas tax update. We're going to have the project manager for that here in September for the board meeting, so we'll get a formal update at that time. And then also another request was for an update on the Annie and Mary Trail. And so we're also working on that for a future board meeting with the City of Arcata and Caltrans able to give us some updates on that. And then that is it. The other thing I just mentioned is we did do the agenda a little bit differently with the links built in. So if you have any feedback on that, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call. So far it's been positive feedback, but if you have any thoughts or suggested changes, we're happy to take comments on that. And that's it for me.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I'm glad we're going to get the updated new road tax approach coming back to us. Could we also agendize a letter that could come from HCOG requesting that the state consider increased support for local roads? if we had that prepared in advance, we could consider that and send that. I don't know if that's premature or not. We've had the presentation, and I think we know that local roads are desperate for funding, whether it's counties or cities.
Yes, I'd be happy to bring that back.
Thank you.
And that's always necessary.
Speak up.
Any other questions or comments? Well, we'll go back to our PAC member reports and Tasha.
Hi, yeah, we have Jeff Pimentel on the line. Jeff, are you available to give your update?
I am. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I just wanted to come this evening and give an update on the Indianola Undercrossing construction project. So if it's okay, I will share my screen. I just have some photos to show here while I speak. So just give me a moment. Can everyone see that photo?
Yep.
Okay, great. So we're well underway with the Indianola Undercrossing project. Everyone noticed K-rail has been put in place. Lanes, for the most part, are still in their existing location, with most all of our construction work right now currently occurring on the east side of the highway. So as I've mentioned in previous HCOG board meetings, as we've navigated the design and delivery of this project, we're using a very unique construction method to construct this project in light of the extremely soft soils that we have out there, also known as just bay mud. And that's what's called a column supported embankment. Essentially, we will be installing a grid of concrete piles that will perform essentially what's called ground improvement, and give the soil and surface that the structure and our embankments and our ramps that they'll be resting on, really just more bearing capacity to be able to withstand the loads that are going to be on these areas of the land there. So we've begun installing those piles. We have 5 test piles installed, and those are just about cured. You'll notice in the photo there, that is the drill rig that installs these concrete piles. The piles are 16 inches in diameter, and they're on a grid spacing of approximately 8.5 feet on center. And the pile depths are anywhere between 40 and 90 feet, depending on the zone in which they're being installed. So the next step is, now that we have 5 test piles, I'll kind of cycle through some of the photos here. There you'll see a photo of the wonderful bay mud coming out of that boring, that black soil coming out of there. Here's some work of it being done at night. And then finally, that is one of the 5 test piles installed. So the next step will be to test the integrity of the 5 test piles that have been installed. That testing is expected to occur within the next 24 to 48 hours. It will begin. And if all goes well there, at the end of the month, we will then do what's called load testing on the piles, where they'll actually load the piles with certain amount of weight to test their performance. And assuming everything goes well with that, then we'll move into the production columns, which would actually be the column supported embankment columns that will actually serve as the final columns supporting the various features of the project, such as the ramps, the embankments that will be constructed. We expect to start installing production columns in early September. And then in terms of traffic control and staging, the first portion of traffic that will be shifted, right now we're going to be installing the production piles to the east. Once that's complete, then we'll be shifting northbound 101 traffic into that location so that we can begin moving those production piles into the median and working our way west. So anyway, that's the latest I have on that. I just wanted to come and share that with all of you, and I plan to come frequently and provide additional updates. So if anyone has any questions, I can take those now.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions? LaTanya. Oh, we don't have public comment on these reports, this particular section. So thank you, Jeff. That's been informative, and I look forward to getting results from the load test get the toe in the water, so to speak.
Yeah. And actually, if I could just make a comment to LaTanya, I know she wanted to ask a question, but we don't have public comment on these items. LaTanya, if you just Google Caltrans District 1 projects, you should be able to find project webpage for the project, and my contact information is on there. So if you have a particular question you wanted to ask me, feel free to look up my contact information there and reach out, and I can help you out in whatever way I can.
Thank you for that, Jeff. And we appeared to...
I just have a couple of other updates.
Okay.
The Arcata 101 merge project. This project's currently under construction. A lot has happened since our last meeting. The project will add an auxiliary lane for acceleration and deceleration on US 101 between northbound 299 and 101 on-ramp and Gintoli Lane at US 101 off-ramp. The traffic control is currently in place. That closed the 299-101 off-ramp, and also bicycle detours in place. The drilling pads are currently being installed, and the work on the soldier pile wall will begin next week. We expect this project to be completed in March 2024, depending on weather. Just a reminder that we have a public meeting on August 30th for the Fern Bridge. It's likely at 6 p.m. at City Hall. And just a couple real quick updates on Clean California. The Hoopa Valley Tribe broke ground on their $5 million Clean California project last week. There's a tire dump day in Rio Del this weekend. And just a reminder to keep submitting the customer service requests. They really help us and our crews to know where to go. Thank you.
And thank you. And I think the Clean California has become quite popular. And so that's a good thing. And they do great work too. Any other comments? Well, seeing none, we will be adjourned.